everybody, and welcome back to the sort of in hibernation my gaming journey series. So if you've watched the previous two episodes, you know it started with the Spectrum and then moved on to the Master System. Where did it go from there, you might add? Well, I'll put a link in the description to the previous two episodes should you happen to want to watch them. But you know, we're talking probably the mid to late 80s now. And where did my journey go from the Master System? Well, it was about this time that I got myself a part-time job, and still at school, but it was quite a well-paid part-time job. You know, compared with like a paper round, which most people might have done. You know, I think that was about £3 a week or something for a paper round at the time. And I was lucky enough to get myself a job like £10 or £12 a week. So it was like, you know, I was rolling in cash. So of course that opened up the opportunities to save up and buy new stuff, which I could never do before. You know, instead of waiting for birthdays and Christmas, it was now possible to buy stuff when I'd saved the money for it. So it was around the same period that I'd got my Master System, obviously, and I sort of swapped it for like a week or a fortnight with my mate at school, and I had his C64, and I was, you know, I liked it. Obviously a bit different to the Master System. It was going back a step really, you know, more to the Spectrum days, but I'd never had one, so at the time I thought it was quite cool. And the one game I particularly wanted to play at the time was Leaderboard, or World Class Leaderboard, which looked vastly better on the C64 than the Spectrum that I, you know, used to have. And this mate I lent it off hadn't got it, so I specifically went out and bought a budget Leaderboard just to play it after I'd borrowed it, and I absolutely loved it. So that then made me want to buy a C64, and so I saved up and I did. It was like the second model, not the bread bin, you know, the later slimmed down C64 I bought. And I had that in addition to my Master System for a short while, but I didn't have it long, to be fair. And after that sort of initial sort of hype of having it and playing a few games, you know, I had a few. Obviously I had to get Outrun and Power Drift, you know, it was quite good on the C64. And, you know, and Leaderboard, fantastic, like I say. And I've tried a few others, you know, like Winter Games and, you know, the Epix games and things like that. But I soon sort of waned my interest because things were moving on. You know, the C64 was quite old by this point, so you know, it was a bit of a folly purchase, to be honest. And I soon got rid of it again, and hence why my love is now for, you know, is for the Spectrum, because that's where my nostalgia lies. I appreciate everybody who loves the C64 for the same reasons. I totally get that. You know, if you had one, it was better than the Spectrum, and vice versa. But the Spectrum's king for me. So, in a similar vein, I then also picked up, oh, and I should add that I've had a C64 in more recent years when I started collecting stuff, and you know, acquired I don't know, probably a 30 game collection for it. But I just didn't have the nostalgia. So, you know, as we all do, we sell stuff to buy other stuff. It went, and I've no intentions of ever buying another C64 now, to be honest. If I wanted to play anything, you know, there's always emulation, so that would be the only route I'd go in future regarding the C64. So that went, and I bought an NES, and it's a much similar tale with my NES journey as it was for my C64. because again I was a bit late to the party. I was a Sega kid, loved my Master System, but for some reason, I don't even remember why, I wanted a Nintendo. Probably just because it was there and I could save up and, you know, buy it with the proceeds of the C64. I can't remember. But anyway, it was the basic Solus pack I bought with Mario Bros, the original Mario Bros. And again, I only had the NES a short while. I didn't know anyone else who had one. No one in my school had an NES that I knew. It was all Master System. And so again, I just haven't got the nostalgia for the NES. And that quickly went out the door again. Because again, things were moving on, you know. 16-bit was on the horizon. But that said, I did enjoy some fantastic games on the NES. Chief among which is obviously the original Super Mario Bros. This is obviously the combo pack with Duck Hunt, another fantastic game. Love Duck Hunt with the zapper. These aren't my original games, obviously. These are, I've since, you know, been recollecting. I only buy NTSC NES games, so all these are NTSC. Because you know that's another tale. NTSC over PAL. I don't buy PAL. Or it's a shite, in my opinion. Anyway, amazing game, still amazing to this day. One of the greatest games ever made, probably. And you know, not much to be said about it. It's brilliant. Now I had about probably had about 6 or 8 games for my NES at the most. And my brother did have one at the time, and he had a few games for his as well. So combined we probably had about 10 games or so, I'd say. Another one I absolutely loved and still love to this day is Donkey Kong Classics. This has obviously got they're all single screen, obviously, levels, but I just love, particularly the first level. I absolutely love this game. It's just wonderful. It's got Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr. on, obviously, but I just love the original Donkey Kong with the barrels rolling down the steel girders and platforms. Oh, what a game! I'd never get bored of playing this. I've, had it on the Game Boy when they re-released it on that, and I think I've got it on the Switch as well, to be honest. But what a game that is! And then we did have others. I can't remember. We had Mario 2 and 3, obviously. Crazily, I don't own Mario 2 and 3. I don't want Mario 2. I don't like it. But I really want the NTSC Mario 3. That's on my list. I just never seem to get round to it. But anyway, yeah, we had all the Mario games, and we had Super Off-Road, which is a cracking little arcade top-down racer. But then one of my favourite games at the time for my NES, I remember buying this brand new from Toys R Us, and it came with the 3D glasses, and that's Rad Racer. Loved this game. Obviously, I was mad into Outrun at the time, and still am. This was about as close as you could get on the NES, and it still plays well today. It's a real good game. I mean, it's fairly basic, obviously, but you just racing away. You get a choice of cars. You've got like the Formula 1 style car and the Ferrari style car. I don't remember the 3D ever being that effective on it. They were only basic 3D glasses. Like those, very simplistic. But what a game! An absolute classic for me, Rad Racer. Brilliant. But then I think probably my favourite game on the NES, and I say favourite, I've only probably ever played 12 properly, but RC Pro-Am. What an amazing game this is. Absolutely love it. It's a rare game, rare as in Rare, Ultimate Play of the Game Rare. What an amazing game. Absolutely loved it. Me and my brother used to play this all the time. Classic arcade, sort of top down. Well, I mean, it is radio control cars, but you know, it could be, it's just a title really, it's just an overhead racing game, you know, kind of in the vein of, I don't know what to say, I suppose a bit like Micro Machines, but absolutely brilliant game. Still love it to this day. When I sold off all my PAL stuff, fairly recently actually, when I was having a good clear out, which I'm still doing a bit of, to be fair, this was the one I did think about keeping just because I had a nice complete copper, but ultimately I got rid of it because I'm never going to play it. You know, I'd only play this NTSC version, but absolutely love it. And the beauty of the NTSC versions is there were sequels to both of these on NTSC in America. I don't know about Japan actually, after the Famicom, but there's a Rad Racer 2 and an RC Pro Am 2 on American NES, and they were great to finally pick those up, you know, when I started recollecting the NES. But I think those two with Donkey Kong were my favourites at the time. Absolutely loved them, and still, you know, even though I've not got the nostalgia for the NES, they would be the ones I would go back and play still today, to be honest. Right, so as I say, I didn't keep that NES long. Hence the reason I've not got the nostalgia for it now. Because outside of me and my brother, I never knew anybody else who had one. As I say, I was earning a bit of money now, and I was like a kid in a sweet shop. Anything new that come out, I wanted to save up to buy it. So it was around, I can't remember the exact dates to be honest, but it was around this time I bought an Amstrad Gx4000. Why, you might add. And it's a good question these days, because it was an almighty flop. I didn't keep it long. I obviously soon wised up to the fact that it was a bit shit. I can't even remember where I bought it from, to be honest. It was brand new and came in the pack with burning rubber. And I think I had about 2 or 3 other cartridges for it. I remember having World of Sports, which I quite liked at the time, because it was like a multi-event sports title, like sort of winter summer games type thing, world games. But I had something else. It might have been a Batman or a Robocop, I can't remember. But I only remember playing this World of Sports and Burning Rubber. You know, Burning Rubber was my favourite game on the system. And I still think it looks fairly decent, to be fair. It's lovely colourful graphics, and I think when the Amstrad games were programmed right and made for the system, they were far better than the Spectrum and the C64. You know, it could have been like the daddy of all the 8-bit micros, given the the support, rather than having basic Spectrum ports. I think when they were done right, it's an amazing looking system, the Amstrad. Because obviously the GX4000 is just a cartridge based 464. But I didn't keep it long, you know. Again, this is something I've rebought in more recent years when I started collecting again. And I had a lovely condition one, to be honest. It was like brand new. And I bought the same World of Sports, and had the burning rubber obviously included. And you know, I played it, and it was nice to sort of reminisce, but it got to the point where I thought, I'm never going to play this. It's just sitting there, you know. I can reinvest that money into something I want to buy. And a lot of this stuff that I've recollected, you know, 10 years ago, we'll say, I have been selling a lot of recently to fund, you know, this Saturn journey I'm on, and other things, you know. So the GX4000 went out the window with the C64 and the NES. Now it was around this time Comet used to be a great shop. You could go and look what latest things they'd got in stock, all, you know, electronic wizardry. And my mind was blown by the Philips CDI. Laugh now. At the time it looked incredible. You know, it was like photorealistic graphics, you know, and you were playing 8-bit systems at home, and then there's this thing in front of you in the shop, and it's like playing real life sort of video games, because it was literally sort of a video you were controlling. But, you know, the games were very shallow. And there was no I remember particularly there was a tennis game and a golf game, and like I say, it was basically video footage that you could control. But the thought of being able to play games that looked like real life at the time was just mind-blowing. But they played like an absolute dog, the golf and the tennis, I've got to say. And I had the digital video cartridge, so you could play the video CDs as well, which I ended up using it more for that, to be fair. I had quite a few films for it at the time. But I bought a few games. There was Seventh Guest came with it, I think, which was like a puzzle type game, and was alright as I remember. But there was an awful lot of like, you know, sort of all sort of, it was all about the looks, and there was no gameplay. There's some FMV games, you know, and then you had lots of edutainment titles, and, you know, sort of conversions of board games. There was very little in terms of actual innovative, you know, video games to play on it. And once you got past the flashy graphics at the time, which now look terrible, there was really not much there. And as I say, I ended up using it as a video CD player, really. I mean, the controller you got with it was bloody awful. You know, you needed to buy the additional one, which I didn't at the time. Or did I? I might have done, I can't remember. But again, that soon went out the door. Once I'd moved on from video CDs, that went, and I moved on to laserdiscs. And again, I have not recently, sort of 10 years ago, I rebought a CDI, and I got quite a good collection of games for it, to be honest. I must have had, you know, 30 or 40 games. They were good again for the sort of reliving the nostalgia for it, but the vast majority are terrible. I know there are a few people who are collecting CDI now, aren't they? It seems a bit popular, but not for me. The one I rebought eventually broke, and I couldn't be arsed buying another one, and I ended up selling all the games, and the console was faulty, and, you know, got rid of it. And I've absolutely no regrets. It's not a good system, in my opinion. There are the odd games that were alright that I got the second time round, like the Apprentice, I think, was it Demo's Quest? I actually think Hotel Mario is quite decent. That gets derided a bit, but I thought it was alright. It's a basic sort of single screen platform puzzle style game, but I think it's alright. The Zelda games are shocking, or at least the ones I played were. So there's nothing to recommend it for me. I just, you know, don't waste your money. So enough talk about that terrible episode in my gaming history. Finally, things got better, because next on my list, my next sort of piece of hardware in my gaming journey was the mighty Commodore Amiga. So this is really where things sort of took a positive turn, and I actually bought something decent to move on from my Master System, really. this messing around I'd been doing on other systems that I wasn't feeling, you know, the buzz for. Finally, with the Amiga, I did. Now, I was a bit late to the Amiga party by this point, and it was an A600 I bought. Now, I know majority of people out there are going to say that's the worst Amiga going, and maybe it is, I don't know, but it was the one I had, and it's the one I've got the nostalgia for, hence why that's the one I've got now, when I've rebought one all these years later, or whatever, 15 years ago. I think what made me buy it in the first place, obviously it was 16-bit over the Master System being 8-bit, and it was a big jump, but I really wanted to play Lemmings. I don't know why, I suppose it was very different, and I think this version here is one of the original packing games which I had, I think, if I remember right. It's obviously it's only just a bit bigger than the disc the box is. But what a game at the time! It was just a beautiful game. I even got my mum playing this, and my mum don't play games whatsoever. What a game! I mean, it's been converted to every system known to man now, obviously, but at the time, Lemmings on the Amiga, happy days. And then, obviously, the elephant in the room. A lot of people hate it, or some people hate it. I know one in particular hates it. But the mighty Dizzy. Now, I used to love it on the Spectrum, so of course had to get it for the Amiga. And I've got Fantasy World Dizzy, amongst others. There is like a plastic case version of this I've seen as well, which I think I used to have, to be honest, rather than this cardboard box version. But oh, I just love Dizzy. Even to this day I love Dizzy. Treasure Island's my favourite, as you can, that's why I've put it on the TV. But oh, 16-bit Dizzy on the Amiga was such a massive jump over the Spectrum, with the full colour graphics and the beautiful music. Oh, such heady days. Now, another seminal classic of the Amiga, we've got Stunt Car Racer. I mean, this, you know, this just blew your mind at the time. You know, you're moving from the Spectrum and the like NES and Master System to be able to play stuff like this. Oh, absolutely incredible. And it's I haven't got many big box games for the Amiga, to be honest, but what a stunning game. It's still great to play even today. Obviously it's aged, but honestly, at the time, brilliant. Now, I don't know, where should we go next? Yeah, I think we'll go with this one. Now this is definitely my favourite game on the Amiga, and one of my favourite games of all time. And this is the version I had back in the day. It's the budget version, and that's Lotus Turbo Challenge. Hands down, the greatest game on the Amiga for me. And like I say, it's in my top 10 best games ever. Absolutely love this game. The original one is by far the best, in my opinion. Still got the baggie. Yeah, the original one is by far the best. You know, the second one was good, but it doesn't come close to this, in my opinion. The third one takes a serious nosedive for me. But this is amazing. The music is absolutely brilliant. The gameplay is brilliant. It looks brilliant. The only sort of, it's not a criticism really, but the only thing I wish they would have done better was made it full screen rather than being permanent split screen. If it had been like full screen in single player, it would have been the perfect game for me. I absolutely love it. Now of course this was basically re-released on the Super Nintendo, and they called it Top Gear, which again is a fantastic game, but it's not as good as this. This is the version to play, in my opinion. I absolutely love it. I could never get tired of playing this. I need to shut up because it's an amazing game. I absolutely love it. Now, obviously, the Amiga 600 and 1200 were the last Amigas they made, and my journey from the Amiga also sort of then progressed into the CD32, which was basically just a CD version of the Amiga 1200. So, although that was slightly later, I'm going to bundle that now with this Amiga sort of part of my story, rather than get mixed up with something else, you know, a bit further down the line in future episodes. So, the reason I'm doing that is because I've now got games on the CD32 that I originally had on the Amiga, but since rebuying everything, you know, 10 years ago, I bought the CD32 version of some games rather than the Amiga version. So I can't show you the Amiga version, so hence why I'm showing you the CD32 version. So, another absolute classic. Happy days. Sensible soccer. You could argue the greatest football game ever made. I know some people like Kick-Off too, and various other things. But for me, at the time, I think Sensible Soccer was amazing, and still is, really. This is obviously the CD32 version. I had it on the Amiga originally. And again, this got converted to like Mega Drive and SNES and everything, didn't it? But at the time, the Amiga was the place you needed to be playing Sensible Soccer. And it was just amazing. And it's still a great game. That then led me to this, which, to be fair, I've never really played very much, but you never seem to see people talk about it, and it doesn't seem a very particularly common game, and that's Sensible Golf. Obviously that tries to use the same formula with a different sport. It's just one of the few big box games I've still got, and it's in nice condition with the baggie. But it was good, as I remember. It's been absolutely years since I played it. And then, as I say, I loved the original Lotus Challenge, so of course I had to buy Lotus Turbo Challenge 2. Now again, this is a great game, it's really good. And they did change it sort of to the point where it was full screen in single player, which, you know, looked a lot nicer. And they did change the gameplay as well. It's less of a, I mean, it's still a race obviously, but it's less of a, it's more of a time limit race rather than a points finishing race where you get points for finishing 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. This one's more of a time limit, and each sort of level's got a particular theme, like might be fog or, you know, whatever. But for me, my criticism of this game is there's no bloody music. You know, the music was so seminal in the first one, and it's such an amazing part of the game. You know, they solved the split screen issue with this, but then what they gave with one hand, they took away in the other, because they took the music out of the game, and it stops this game being, you know, brilliant for me. It's just really good. Where I think if it had had that amazing music like the first game, this too would have been brilliant. So it's kind of what might have been, in a way, that one for me. I like it, but could have been just a bit more. And then of course I had to buy Lotus 3 when that came out, and this is very similar to Lotus 2 really in how it plays, but the big addition with this one was there was a course editor where you could make your own tracks. Not something I ever bothered with, to be honest. I can't put my finger on it, I just never got on with this. I don't know why really. I mean, it's very similar to number 2, it never did much for me. So, I mean, I'm chuffed to have it, don't get me wrong, and I'd still play it, it's still a great game, it's just, it's not as good as the first two, that kind of decrease in greatness for me. So, what do you think? Anybody out there? Got any thoughts on the Lotus trilogy? Then in a similar vein, I used to love Jaguar XJ220. Very similar. This is my core design rather than Gremlin, but it looks very similar and plays very similar to Lotus, and it is really good. I do like this. I remember having this on the Mega CD when it came out as well. I can't remember if there was any differences, to be honest. But I don't know. There was obviously a bit of a. They were quite popular, this style of game at the time, obviously. When did this come out? Don't know. It's got to be early 90s, I would imagine. Don't know. Anyway. Another sort of big hitter at the time, if you like, for the Amiga. Now I'm showing you CD32 versions of these games. Zool. Now this was at the time of Sonic, obviously, and it was the Amiga's answer to Sonic. And the 1200 version had additional sort of background graphics to make it look a bit fancier, which this CD32 version is the same. But I wasn't crazy about it at the time, and I don't think it's aged well. Much like Sonic. I'm not a fan of Zool, but you've got to have it if you've got an Amiga. I don't think I ever played the second one, but that's Zool anyway. The game I really used to like when I had it on the Amiga was Fire and Ice. Now this is your fairly cool sort of little platform game. The Daring Adventures of Cool Coyote. It was great graphics at the time and a really fun little game. Don't remember much about it now, it's been years since I played it. And then in a similar vein, this is kind of another sort of Sonic style game. And again, I had this on the Amiga rather than the CD32. We've got Super Frog. I've got a feeling they've re-released this on something, haven't they, recently? But this is quite good, it's quite fast like Sonic. Far better than Zool in my opinion. Not a bad little game, Super Frog. But then, now we're talking more CD32 now to finish off this little journey. And we've got the Lotus trilogy on CD. Now this is obviously all 3 games on one disc. Now this did originally come in a big box, which I unfortunately I haven't got. The annoying thing is that my original big box version of this, from when I had the console from new, when I sold the console, for some reason I kept the big outer box and only sold this bit, and it sat in my mum's house for years and years and years. And a few years ago, when we was decorating the room it was in, I threw it away. What an absolute donut. Because now this is quite an expensive game to get, especially with the big box. You know, it's expensive like this. Big regret. Should never have chucked that away. But, you know, I've got to get this for the CD32. But to be honest, it's not as good as the original Amiga games, because for some, again I'm talking about the first game really, because for some unknown bloody mental reason they changed the music and it's not in the same league as the original music. So for that reason I'd never play this version, just play the original disc version. I'll never understand why they did that. And then this kind of comes full circle to the you know, my original 600, because I had a few Dizzy games for it, but now I've got them on the CD32. Again, this is not an easy or a cheap game to buy these days. I'm assuming there's a big box for this. I've never seen it, but let me know actually, is there a big box version of this, or is there a big box outer for this game? But yeah, we've got Prince of the Yolkveld, Crystal Kingdom Dizzy, which I didn't have at the time, I don't think. And we've got Fantastic Dizzy, which was on the Mega Drive as well. But then we've got Treasure Island Dizzy, Magic Land Dizzy, and Spellbound Dizzy, which I used to have in the individual single boxes for the Amiga back in the day. But you've got all 6 games on this one disc. And the disc is in the machine, because that's the one I play most on the CD32. When I crank it up, it's invariably to play this. Love Dizzy, always will. And there we go. That comes to the end of the journey with the Amiga. That got sold. I mean, the 600 got sold and I then bought a CD32, but for the purposes to keep this a bit neater, we've bundled it in the same episode. Because I didn't actually have the CD32 for long, or the Amiga for that matter, really. But the next console in my journey really changed my sort of outlook on gaming as a whole. So what was that, you might say? Well, hopefully you'll tune into the next episode to find out. I don't know when that's going to be, but all will be revealed when episode 4 gets filmed. But thanks for watching. I hope that wasn't too boring, and if you've got any thoughts on any of that lot, or your experiences with similar things, please let me know. But thanks for watching anyway, and I'll see you soon. Sayonara.